There is a ball somewhere above New Jersey that never came down. It left his foot at exactly the wrong angle.
It climbed.
It kept climbing, past the crossbar, past the noise, past 80,000 held breaths, and it vanished into the dark. Some people say a ball like that eventually falls somewhere, lands in a parking lot, rolls under a car, but this ball, in a way that matters more than physics, never landed. It is still up there, falling slowly through the mind of a man who has scored more goals than almost anyone alive. This is not a story about a missed penalty. This is a story about the hours that came after it. The hours nobody filmed. The hotel room. The silence. The phone he could not bring himself to pick up. Stay with us tonight, my friend, because we are not going to talk about football. We are going to talk about the loneliest room in the world, and the man who sat in it. The kick let us start where the cameras stopped looking, June 26, 2016, MetLife Stadium, New Jersey. Argentina against Chile, the final of the Copa America Centenario. 90 minutes of football had settled nothing. Extra time had settled nothing. The match had been dragged, kicking and exhausted, into a penalty shootout. The cruelest invention in the sport, a lottery dressed up as justice. Lionel Messi walked to the spot first. He had walked to spots like this 1,000 times before. He had scored penalties in empty stadiums during training, penalties in cup finals, penalties that meant nothing, and penalties that meant everything. His technique was almost boring in its reliability. Placement over power. A short run. A calm strike. It was statistically one of the safest bets in world football. He placed the ball down. He stepped back. He did not look like a man who was afraid, but something had already shifted before his foot ever touched the ball. This was his fourth major final for Argentina in 3 years. He had lost the other 3. The 2014 World Cup lost. The 2015 Copa America lost, also on penalties, also against Chile. And now this, a rematch with the same ghost, on a different field, in a different country, but somehow the same nightmare, replaying itself with a horrible sense of déjà vu. He struck the ball. It went up, and it did not come down where a goal was waiting. It sailed over the crossbar and disappeared into the black sky above the stadium lights, and for 1 full second, 80,000 people watched nothing at all. Just a dark gap where a football used to be. Chile scored their next kick. The final whistle of the shootout blew like a small, cheap sound after all that noise. Argentina had lost, again. Lionel Messi sat down on the grass, not in fury, not with fists thrown at the sky. He simply folded, the way a puppet folds when the strings go slack. And he sat there while his teammates walked past him in shock. And the cameras, hungry as they always are, zoomed in on his face. He was crying. The broadcast held on that image for what felt like a very long time. The greatest player of his generation, sitting alone on a patch of American grass, weeping into his own hands, while a country 8,000 kilometers away watched their television screens go quiet. See, the walk back here is what the cameras did not show you. After the shootout, after the medal ceremony he could barely stand through, after Chile lifted a trophy that felt to him like it had been carved out of his own chest, Lionel Messi had to walk back to a locker room, then back to a bus, then back to a hotel. Imagine that walk, my friend. Imagine being the most watched man on the planet in that exact moment, and having to move your body through hallways full of people who love you and cannot help you. Security guards who cannot look you in the eye. Teammates who want to say something and find there is nothing to say. A silence so total it becomes its own kind of noise. He did not speak much on that walk. Those close to him would later describe him as somewhere else entirely, present in body, absent everywhere it mattered. His jaw was tight. His eyes were red but dry now, the tears already spent on the grass in front of the world. In the locker room, before the press even arrived, he sat on a bench with his elbows on his knees. Some accounts say he stayed like that for several minutes without moving, not talking, not looking at his phone, just staring at a point on the floor that only he could see, and then he stood up. And he did something that would change the next 6 weeks of his life, and in some ways, the next 6 years. He told the reporters gathered outside the door that his time with the national team was finished. For me, the national team is over, he said. I've done all I could. It hurts not to be a champion, 29 years old. 4 finals, 0 trophies for his country. He said the words the way a man signs a document he has already decided not to reread. Final, closed, done. Then he boarded a bus, and later a plane, and he flew back to Barcelona carrying a silence that no metaphor can properly describe. Let us try anyway. 3. The hotel room, or what we imagine. There is a room, somewhere in this story, that history did not photograph. We do not know its exact shape. We do not know if the curtains were open or closed, whether the television was on or silent, whether he ordered food and let it go cold, or whether he simply sat by a window and watched the lights of a city that was not his own. But we can imagine it. Because every person who has ever failed at the thing they built their entire identity around has sat in a room like this one. Picture it. The adrenaline of the match has drained out of his body hours ago, and what is left behind is worse than pain. It is emptiness. The kind of emptiness that arrives after you have given absolutely everything you have, and it still was not enough. His phone sits nearby. It is by now almost certainly full. Messages from family, messages from friends, messages perhaps from teammates who want to check on him but do not know what words could possibly help. And somewhere in that flood, quietly, are messages from an entire country. From Argentina, from people he has never met and will never meet, who are, in this exact hour, either furious at him or grieving with him, or both at once. He does not pick it up. There is a particular kind of exhaustion that comes not from running, but from feeling. Messi had spent his whole public life being described endlessly as calm, unbothered, a machine cold and efficient, immune to the pressure that broke lesser men. Sports writers loved that word, machine. It made him easier to write about. Machines do not need sympathy. Machines simply perform, or they do not. But a machine does not sit on a hotel bed with its shoes still on, staring at a wall, unable to summon the energy to call its own wife, Antonella Roccuzzo. His partner, the mother of his children, the person who had known him since he was a shy boy in Rosario clutching a football like it was the only solid thing in an uncertain world, was somewhere in that same silence with him, or waiting for him back home, worried in the particular way that people worry about someone who has just watched his own dream collapse in front of the entire world. We do not know the exact words spoken in that room, if any words were spoken at all. Some nights do not need words. Some nights are simply survived. What we do know is this. In the days that followed, those close to him described a man who had gone quiet in a way they had never seen before. Not sulking, not dramatic, just quiet, the way a house is quiet after a storm has passed through it and taken something with it on the way out. Fee, the weight. He was actually carrying to understand that hotel room. You have to understand what Messi believed he owed. He left Argentina at 13 years old. A small, undersized boy from Rosario with a growth hormone deficiency that no domestic club could afford to treat. Barcelona could. Barcelona did. And in exchange, Argentina, in some unspoken but very real sense, felt they had lost him. He grew up wearing Barcelona's crest, speaking with a Catalan lilt threaded through his Rosario accent. Becoming, statistically and stylistically, the greatest player his adopted club had ever produced. And so when he wore the blue and white of Argentina, something strange happened. He was not simply playing football. He was trying to prove over and over again across a decade that leaving had not made him any less theirs. That the boy who got on a plane at 13 had never really left at all. This is the weight that sat on his shoulders every time he walked onto a pitch wearing that shirt. Not the weight of winning, the weight of belonging. Diego Maradona had won a World Cup almost single-handedly in 1986, carrying an entire nation on his back. Through 5 matches, nobody else could have carried them through. Argentina never forgot that. They built a religion around it, and for years, whenever Messi failed to lift a trophy, the comparison hung in the air, unspoken but suffocating. He is not Diego. He does not bleed for the shirt the way Diego bled for it. It was never fair. It was never accurate. But in that hotel room in the summer of 2016, after his 4th final loss, it is not hard to imagine that this was the voice playing loudest in his head. Not the commentators, not the pundits. His own voice asking him the question that no trophy at Barcelona could ever answer. Why can I win everything for them and nothing for us? The 6 weeks, what followed his retirement announcement, was not silence. It was the opposite. Argentina, a country that had just watched its greatest player quit on live television, did not simply accept it. They rebelled against it publicly, loudly, and with an intensity that surprised even those who knew how much football meant there. The president of Argentina personally called him and asked him to reconsider. On national television, a small boy, maybe 7 or 8 years old, cried into a microphone and begged Messi to come back, saying the words a nation could not bring itself to say through its adult mouths. Newspapers ran the same single word across their front pages for days. Volve. Come back. Diego Maradona himself, the man whose shadow had haunted Messi's entire international career, spoke out and urged him to return, an irony so sharp it could have cut glass. Imagine receiving that. Imagine sitting in your house in Barcelona, trying to process the worst professional heartbreak of your life, while an entire nation refuses to let you have your grief in peace, because they need you back too badly to let you go. For 6 weeks, Messi said nothing publicly. He trained with Barcelona. He returned to the rhythm of club football, the sport that had never once broken his heart the way the national team had. Behind closed doors, conversations were happening. With his family, with Argentine football officials, with his own conscience most of all, and then in August of 2016 he reversed the decision. He did not explain it with grand words. There was no dramatic press conference this time, no tears in front of cameras. He simply returned to the squad quietly, the way a person returns to a room they said they would never enter again. Because leaving the door closed forever turned out to be harder than walking back through it. Sig, why he came back here is the question worth sitting with. My friend, he came back to a team that had just handed him his 3rd and 4th major final defeats in a row. He came back to a country whose adoration could turn in an instant into something closer to resentment whenever he failed them. He came back knowing there was no guarantee, none at all, that the story would end any differently the next time. Why does a person walk back into a room that has hurt them 4 times already? The easy answer is duty. The easy answer is that the boy from Rosario could never truly abandon the flag that had raised him, even after it had left him crying alone in a hotel room on the other side of the world. That answer is true, but it is not the whole truth. The deeper answer might be this. Messi was not chasing a trophy anymore. Not really, not in that moment. He was chasing an ending. Because a story that stops at the sound of a ball flying over a crossbar is not a story a person can live inside of forever. The mind does not accept unfinished business easily. Somewhere in that 6 weeks of silence, he must have understood that walking away permanently would not end the pain. It would simply freeze it, forever, in that exact position. Sitting on the grass in New Jersey with his head in his hands, he needed a different final image. Even if he did not yet know what it would look like. 7. The years between. What came after was not immediate redemption. Life rarely offers that kind of clean arc. Argentina continued to struggle. There were more disappointing tournaments, more early exits, more nights when the weight on Messi's shoulders seemed to grow heavier rather than lighter. Critics who had once called him the greatest player of all time began cruelly to add an asterisk, except for his country, as if greatness needed a passport stamp to be complete. And then, on the 25th of November 2020, something happened that nobody in Argentine football was prepared for. Diego Maradona died. He was 60 years old. The country entered 3 days of official mourning. Statues were built overnight out of flowers and candles. An entire nation grieved a man who had, for better and for worse, defined what it meant to wear the Argentina shirt, and quietly, almost too quietly to say out loud, something shifted in the years that followed. Some Argentine football insiders admitted, almost with embarrassment, that Maradona's death had lifted something from the current squad. Not joy, never joy, but a kind of release. The shadow they had all been measured against. The ghost that made every Messi failure feel like a betrayal of a legacy he had never asked to inherit was finally gone. They no longer had to become Diego. They could simply become themselves. 8 months later, in July of 2021, that shift bore fruit. Argentina reached the Copa America final again. This time against Brazil on Brazilian soil, in a stadium that should have guaranteed a hostile defeat. Angel Di Maria scored in the 22nd minute. Argentina held on, 1-0. When the final whistle blew, Messi dropped to his knees on the grass and wept, just as he had 5 years earlier in New Jersey. But this time the tears meant something entirely different. Eat. The same grass, two different men. Here is the image worth holding on to, my friend. Two men on two different patches of grass 5 years apart, both named Lionel Messi, both crying in front of the entire world. In 2016, the tears were grief. A door closing, a dream that had run out of chances. A man who had given everything and still walked away with nothing but a title, unwanted. That history was already preparing to hand him, the greatest player never to win with his country. In 2021, the tears were something closer to release. Not triumph exactly, not yet, because the biggest prize of all, the World Cup itself, still waited somewhere ahead, unclaimed. But a weight, 15 years in the making, had finally, partially, been set down. Between those two moments sits the hotel room we can never fully see into. The 6 weeks of silence, the small boy crying on television, the president's phone call, Maradona's public plea, and underneath all of it, a private, quiet decision made by one man, alone, to walk back through a door he had already tried to close forever. Ike. What the ball actually meant. Let us return to where we began. The ball sailing up into the dark sky above MetLife Stadium, never quite landing. It is tempting to think of that penalty miss as simply a mistake. A single kick badly struck in a shootout that could have gone 1,000 different ways. Football is cruel like that. Millimeters decide legacies, but that would miss the point of the story. The ball that flew over the crossbar in 2016 was never really about the shootout. It was about everything that had been building inside one man for a decade. Every comparison to a ghost he never chose to compete with. Every accusation that he did not care enough, bleed enough, want it enough, simply because his calm exterior did not perform pain the way the crowd expected pain to look. That ball carried all of it, and when it disappeared into the dark, so for a moment did he. What redeems this story is not the missed kick. It is what happened in the silence afterward. The choice, made alone in a room no camera ever found, to come back anyway. Not because he believed, with certainty, that the outcome would be different, but because some things are worth attempting again even without a guarantee, and because walking away permanently is sometimes a heavier weight to carry than staying and risking failure one more time. X. The final whistle. Years later, we know how the larger story ends, or at least how it has ended so far. 6 years after that night in New Jersey, on a different continent, in a stadium in Qatar, Lionel Messi would finally lift the World Cup itself. The trophy that had eluded him through 4 finals and a retirement, he almost never reversed. He would win it in a shootout once again, the same cruel format that had broken him in 2016. This time, he scored his kick. This time, the ball did not fly into the dark, but that ending only makes sense because of what came before it. Because of the hotel room, because of the 6 weeks, because of a decision made quietly, without cameras, without a script, by a man who had every reason in the world to stay retired and chose instead to walk back through a door he had sworn shut. That is the part of the story that never makes the highlight reels, not the trophy raised at the end. The private, unglamorous, unfilmed choice to try again after the worst night of your professional life. What this story is really about. Perhaps you were listening tonight, my friend, thinking of a door in your own life. A moment where you failed, publicly or privately, in front of people who mattered to you, or worse. In front of yourself. Perhaps you too have sat in a room like the one we imagined for Messi. Phone unanswered. Curtains closed. The exact shape of the disappointment still fresh enough to feel, hour after hour, like it might never fade. Here is what the story of that ball, flying into a New Jersey sky, and the silent room that came after it, might offer you. The retirement was real. The grief was real. The 6 weeks of silence were real. But so was the return. So was the walk back through the door. Not because the pain disappeared, but because some part of him understood that the story was not finished simply because one chapter had ended badly. A ball flew into the dark that night in 2016, and it never really came down. Perhaps some things are never meant to. Perhaps the point was never to catch it. Perhaps the point was only to walk back onto the field the next time and try again and let the outcome be whatever it will be. Thank you for sitting with me in that quiet room tonight, my friend. If this story moved you, tell me in the comments below about a door you closed once and later walked back through. I would like to hear it.